So, had you not gotten your bell rung, as you say, how long do you think you would have stayed?
In that unit, probably not much longer because regardless that mission that went bad, um, everything just kind of started to fall apart. There were like so Abtekas in Ukraine. It's important to understand because a lot of the prescription medications that we have over here, you can just get over the counter in Ukraine. Like it's not a huge deal. And so there was some issues with a bunch of the guys taking this muscle relaxer called gabapentin, and it became a problem. Like there was a lot of drug use and stuff like that, and everything just kind of started to come unraveled. So I think we would have left anyway. But
Would you have wanted to stay in Ukraine after that, or would you have come back to the States?
I would have stayed in you. I mean, we ended up leaving anyway, and we ended up going to a different brigade entirely. One of the things that really pissed me off with the previous one was after I'd gotten blown up and gotten back from the hospital, we had tried to get some recon drones, so that wouldn't happen again. And all we needed was like the commander to sign a piece of paper that says, "Hey, it's okay to get this stuff from an NGO." And they wouldn't sign it. They're like, "Oh yeah, you guys are just like a house maintenance battalion or whatever." And it's like, "Oh yeah, I got blown up maintaining my house. That's exactly what happened. Sure, we'll go with that."
Wow.
So yeah, I was like, well, if they care that little about, like, if they think that little of us, they're just gonna send us on more suicide missions. What's the point?
Hmm.
Hmm.
So, what was it like being, like, specifically being an American during this conflict and interacting with Ukrainians? Like, was there any opportunity for you to, be friendly with people? Was there like downtime where there was some sort of group camaraderie, or were you always just an outsider to the Ukrainians?
Well, it depends on which unit we're talking about. So I guess I can say that the unit that we left was the 59th, and there was no like they had the American unit and then they had the Ukrainian unit, and we kind of kept separate. Like there was some interactions and stuff, but we lived in like different houses. Like we had our own house, and I say house, more like a shack. Um,
Yeah, the
but
house that you
it,
maintained.
yeah, exactly, yeah. The house that I got blown up maintaining.
Right.
It was very. I'm hesitant to say segregated, but that's really what it was. And then when we got to our new brigade, which we currently still have folks at, so I won't say which one. Um, that was a lot more integrated. Like we actually had a translator that go
Huh.
around, which was a game changer. We just the little Ukrainian that I spoke and the little American the little English that the Ukrainians spoke was not enough to bridge most of those gaps.
Hmm.
So that was big.
I was actually curious about that. What are there any words or phrases that you picked up?
Yeah, я не знаю, я американский. I don't know, I'm American. I use that one a lot.
That is applicable in so many different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what's great is the Ukrainians, they'll just start talking at you, and then when you very obviously don't understand, they'll just talk faster. It's like, oh, cool, that helps.
Well, it's like talking slower and louder in English. Like that doesn't do anything
Yeah,
either.
it, at least when you talk slower, it's easier to kind of understand. They go from hubba dubba 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 to hubba
That's a soundbite
Just
right there.
Ukrainian like visible frustration as they're trying to get their point across.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
So.
And did you wind up having an opportunity to do anything other than be on the front lines of combat? Like, was there downtime where you could like actually see parts of Ukraine that were not under fire by Russians?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all of Ukraine's under fire by Russians, but
Sure, but like where buildings are still standing and people go to work.
Yeah, especially during the kind of the last half of my little adventure, we got to have a little bit more autonomy. And on our way in, we base out of Kyiv usually, and like when we're trying to find a unit or something, Kyiv is generally about as far east as most NGOs will go, and it's about as far west as most military organizations will go. So it's kind of the perfect, stopping ground. So Kyiv is really cool. Lviv is just kind of a standard. It's a very European city, which is strange after spending so much time in, comm block shitholes. So, yeah, you get to see a little bit. It's not. I would say 90% of your time is, at least my time, was not spent on the front lines. Maybe more like 60%. A lot of it was spent kind of in the background, just trying to organize everything.
Is there anything that you, I hesitate to say miss, but was there anything you appreciated about your time there that sort of you weren't expecting to?
All of the girls are beautiful.
All right.
Oh,
That's an opener. Can you follow up on that?
Got it.
It's uncanny. Coming back to America and going into a Walmart was one of the most disappointing experiences of my life.
Now that should be Ukraine's recruitment drive.
Dude, oh my God. Well,
Side
I'll put it
tangent.
this way. I'm dating a Ukrainian now, so if that's any indication.
Congrats.
I'm happy for the two of you.
Wow.
It's
Not expecting that answer.
unreal.
Well,
They are just, it's amazing because all the dudes are ugly as hell, generally speaking. It's like I just, 2 plus 2 is equaling 3. It makes no sense. Like you have babushkas, and then you have like these block-headed bald dudes, and then you have like, I don't know, this generation of beautiful girls. It makes no sense.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting as hell. So
I can't be the only one asking questions. Surely.
I'm stunned. I have nothing else to ask now.
I'm gonna say I've been doing my best not to interject because we have so many people on the call. It's very easy for our audio to all start talking over one another.
Right.
So I've been in like listener mode. We could do like a Q&A after you kind of get through your whole story section. Was my thought. So all of us can kind of go in order and just ask individual questions.
Okay.
I do have more memes to send as well if the time is right.
yeah,
you've been putting them
if you
No,
got,
like related to the story.
yeah, if there's any Ukraine memes that you think are applicable, be sure to mention them, and I'll pull them up. I don't know what's next to be. I guess so. We left the 59th on the 4th of July actually, and then went back to Kyiv for about a month while we were looking for another unit. We almost went to the 79th, but their command were. It's very rare that you find a Ukrainian command that's not a bunch of assholes, and the 79th was no different. Like we showed up, the guy that we were talking to was like, yeah, I mean all of the soldiers are on board. They really want to meet you, and the command wants to meet you too because he's Soviet and you're American, and there's a embedded distrust there.
Lovely.
So we show up and we meet all the guys and everything. And we're like, yeah, this is cool. They were super overworked. They were working out near Volodar, so they were really having to work for their pay. But the commander just like didn't show up, and we're like, well, if he wants to, if there's a requirement to meet us and he's just not going to turn up, we're going to take that as a no. So we went back to Kyiv, and that was where we found our current unit, and we got in touch with a bunch of donors and started building a drone team out there. And that's where all the boys are still at. So I can't say too much on that subject, but that played a little bit more into my engineering expertise.
Mm.
I'd say so. So I guess so. You go there, you get your shit rocked. You
Yeah.
go back to Kyiv. Soviets still don't like Americans for whatever reason. And so then what happens after that? Like you build the super tank, you build the Iron Man suit. What happens next?
As far as the drone unit,
No, just as far as your time over there, like.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, basically from that point on, I was working with the drone guys to kind of R&D their drone setup. They're using repeaters basically strapped to the undersides of drones to like try and extend range of FPVs. So that's a lot of what I worked on, was configuring FPVs and shooting AT4s on the range. So I basically did that right up until I left, which was December.
Oh, so this was like really recent then.
Yeah, we were. I mean, I was there for. It took a month or two to find the unit, and then I was. By that time, I was like, well, I got to go back. It's funny. The thing that brought me back was dental insurance. If I don't have a dental appointment for like, if I don't get 2 in a year, then I lose dental insurance. So I had to come back to keep that.
Interesting.
Oh, so are you going back then?
Why am I going back to Ukraine?
Are you going? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I guess there's I have several questions, but as Cullen said, I feel like we should just go in order, because at this point you've returned to the States last month, and you're still you're planning on returning to Ukraine. Yeah. So at this point, I feel pretty comfortable. We can open it up to some Q&A.
Yeah, how about it?
So I guess my main question is why did you have nothing like a job or school or anything stopping you from going over to Ukraine and helping fight? Like, was there just nothing here?
Well, okay, so the story with that is a little bit complicated. I had a job, and my mom had kind of a medical scare. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go take care of her for a little bit, and then I guess I'll come back. And then my company had gotten bought out, and they fired a lot of the folks that I had worked with and really liked. So I was like, yeah, actually maybe I'm not going to come back. And that was when I did the round 2.
Huh.
Like, well, there's an opportunity to go back. I might as well.
So, like, as you know, serving over there, right? Like, obviously, you've given kind of it was a day that ends in Y. That's why I went over there, and so that I can get that to an extent. But like, so you officially had to sign up with the Ukrainian military, right?
Yeah.
So, do you get? I guess like what's your victor's spoils? I guess, or is that like a factor that you've even like paid attention to? Like any of that sort of stuff. Like obviously you've gotten some of the benefits of being over there with your girlfriend, right? So
yeah. I mean, if you're with the Ukrainian military, you get paid, and combat pay isn't nothing. It's not like great, but it's enough to live on. And Ukraine is so cheap. You spend, I don't know, maybe $300 a month to just live,
Jesus.
but everything else is pretty disposable as far as income goes. So it actually isn't that bad, just as far as the pay goes.
Gotcha.
And then we have donors that give us lots of equipment and stuff. So I ended up with like an $800 headset and
Oh,
like
damn.
some nods and stuff like that. So we got lots of free shit, but it's all, with the intent to be used out there. So
Yeah.
Hmm.
I guess I'll go next.
Yeah.
Whoever's got a question, just speak up.
All right. So from all your time there, what was your favorite part?
Besides the girls.
Oh God. Yeah, the girls are hard to beat. I don't know, just bullshitting in the cities is a lot of fun because, like I said, it's the Wild West, and if you have a military ID, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like, for example, I got pulled over in Ukraine. It's fucking weird. You can't turn right on a red unless it specifically says you can. And so I did, naturally, because I'm American and I don't give a shit. But there were literally cops waiting right there for people that were trying to do that. And I got pulled over, and they're like, "Oh, why do you have the Ukrainian chevron on your arm?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm military." And they're like, "Oh, we don't prosecute military. Have a nice day."
Jesus Christ.
And you
Oh,
proceeded to do donuts at the red light.
Yeah, you spun out, challenged someone to a street race.
I mean, seriously, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Whenever we needed, it's about the size of Texas, and so it takes a while to get from one side of the country to the other. But a lot of our vehicles, you just don't give a shit. So you can sit happily at 110, 120 miles an hour and just like cruise whenever there are the big long highways, which are pretty rare. But if you're going from west to east, there's I think it's the E50 or something, I don't remember. That goes from all the way from Przemysl in Poland and ends up in Kharkiv, and I think continues on. But there's a big ass road, so you can sit quite happily at 120 miles an hour all the way across the country. And if you're military, you get pulled over and you're just like, "I'm military," and they'll let you go.
Yeah, it's actually really funny that you mentioned that. I remember Krema's little aside about when he was in Kiev, I think. He was told, stay away from the military guys because they can do whatever they want. It sounds like you were one of the guys who could do whatever you wanted.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it's strange. It's kind of you get a lot of freedom out there and you sacrifice a lot of freedom. So, for example, when I was leaving, I had let them know a month in advance. I'm like, "Hey, I need to be back in Poland by this date." It was December 3rd or something like that. And they go, "Okay, we'll work on it." And 2 weeks from when I'm supposed to go, I've just been waiting around on base for them to come by with the paperwork that I can sign. I'm 2 weeks. I'm supposed to leave, and I'm like, "All right, fuck this. They're not doing anything." So I go to Kyiv. 2 days later, I get a call. "Oh yeah, you got to come back to base and sign the paperwork." I'm like, "Oh fuck, all right, whatever. I got to go halfway across the country again." So I do, and they have me sign 3 pieces of paperwork, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you should be good." So I'm like, "All right." So I leave. They call me again. "Okay, we need you to come back to base and sign this paperwork now." I'm like, "Fine, all right, whatever." So I go back to base, and I leave in a week by this point, maybe 4 days. And they're like, "All right, so you're squared away on the paperwork front. Now you need to go all the way to Dnipro to hand in your military ID." And eventually I was just like, "Fuck that. I'm just leaving. You guys can deal with this shit. I don't care. It's all paperwork on your end. I'll leave you my military ID if you want it, but fuck off." So yeah, I mean the Ukrainians love their paperwork, and they have not figured out DocuSign yet, which makes all of this stuff a pain in the dick.
Right. Okay, I've got a question which I didn't imagine I would even be asking, because when I heard that we were going to be talking to somebody that's been over there and on the front lines, I never imagined I'd, bring up this subject. But since you mentioned it earlier, and you can share as many, whether it's personal or intimate details you want, but how did you meet your significant other? Was there
I
a
was
cool...
gonna ask that question.
Yeah, sorry, I
So
stole yours. I'm like,
Tinder.
Yeah, I was like, what's the story there?
Ukrainian Tinder.
Yep. Can confirm. Ukrainian Tinder goes absolutely hog wild. Like that was just a pastime. So it started out as on my first trip. My buddy who had been over there previously goes, okay, so you need to get Ukrainian Tinder. It's tradition at this point because one of our other guys was like, you need to. So this guy goes, hey, you need to experience Ukrainian Tinder. I'll pay for it. So my friend goes, all right, since I've had my Tinder paid, I will pay for yours.
You like pay it forward for the next guy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So anyway, at some point, it's crazy because you scroll through and everybody's hot. It's the most bizarre experience ever because in the United States, like hot people are kind of a rarity. Over there, fucking everyone.
American debuff.
Yeah, for real.
Are the stories?
At some point, it's just a pastime. Like you scroll through and you're like, oh wow, this is. I mean, it's interesting as all hell because you're. My friend calls it people shopping.
No. Are you going to say people shopping? What the fuck?
Yeah, seriously, that's what it's like. It's like scrolling through a menu full of people, and you read the bios, and you're like, wow, that is interesting as all hell. And it's not even necessarily that you're looking for that. It's just so interesting.
Okay, go on. I'll let you speak, and I might interject the questions in between, but go on.
Yeah, have at it. Anyway, there's a category in Tinder called sporty, and I was like, all right, maybe I'll find somebody that knows where a rock gym is, because Google Maps and stuff, it's not updated out there.
Well, like climbing, like bouldering.
Yeah, like a climbing. So I was just like, swiping through the sporty section of Tinder, and I matched with this girl, and I race rally cars, and she goes, oh yeah, you race rally. I had a picture of a rolled over rally car in my profile. She goes, oh, you race rally cars. I'm like, oh yeah. And she was, asking all sorts of questions about it. And I'm like, I've never had anybody be interested in this. This is a breath of fresh air, I guess. So that was the catalyst for that.
I love that the picture you decided on was you failing to successfully drive a rally car.
Yep. My Tinder profile is goofy.
If there's a way that I can censor that image so it's not like revealing, I would love to be able to put that in the video.
Yes, I will.
The non-text version.
Yeah. Is there a text chat that I can drop that in?
You can
you can
literally
anything
the general
right now.
chat, or after this call, you might not be in the server. You can just send it to me directly.
Yeah.
It's okay. I can pull it up on my phone and drop it in the general.
Got
I don't care as long as you put a box over my eyes and then screenshot it so that you can't remove the box in Photoshop.
Oh yeah. No problem.
Yeah.
Cool. And I guess maybe sort of a follow-up to that question, because it's interesting getting like a on-the-ground perspective of like sort of people our age, especially in like an age of information where you can just date people from a phone app, like in a war-torn country, right? Like, did you find a lot of the women, at least on that app itself, looking for like long-term relationships or like just
at
something
this point,
casual?
Colin's just seeing if he needs to enlist.
I'm genuinely curious as to how a war would affect the culture there,
It's actually a pretty even spread, especially now.
Jesus.
Oh my god.
Sorry.
Go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So early war, back when there was fighting in Irpin and Bucha, and like the outskirts of Kyiv, I had a friend that fought out there, and he was telling me stories of like, oh yeah, I was matching girls on Tinder, and they were reporting Russian troop movements.
Oh my god!
Goddamn!
That's
goddamn heroes!
That stuff was true about like the people matching with guys on Tinder to figure out what the Russians were doing.
Oh yeah, like we had like 4 guys when we were out in the Donbass. We had like 4 guys match with some girl. I say girl, some person from Donetsk, and I am 100% sure it was like some Russian spy.
That's wild.
It's pretty crazy.
I didn't even think about that, like catfishing over there.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's nutty.
Was that something you were worried about when you started using Ukrainian Tinder, and like met this girl? That it might be a Russian spy?
So I was careful enough that I knew enough not to disclose any detailed information, especially to like random people. If I had met him in person and gotten to know him a little bit better, I was okay disclosing a little bit more.
But I feel like it's hard to explain. Like, there's only one reason an American would be in Ukraine voluntarily. I'm pretty sure.
No, just sightseeing.
Yeah, I call it war tourism. But there's lots of like volunteerism and stuff out there still. So I mean, there's multiple reasons why you'd be out there, but generally speaking, yeah, it's pretty obvious.
Damn, crazy stuff.
It's like a bit of fun trivia actually. So when the war in Ukraine just broke out, like this was like maybe 2 weeks after we saw the very first headlines. I was on Tinder here in Australia, and I actually matched with like what is essentially a Ukrainian refugee, right? And
Yeah.
like I immediately messaged them. I'm like, hey, we're having a really hard time finding Ukrainians.
No.
I covered you.
No.
I'm curious to interview you, and she's like, yes, of course. She was lovely. She
Is it your current girlfriend?
I remember
Yes or no?
you citing that source. I remember watching that episode, and you mentioned that there was a Ukrainian refugee in Australia that... Oh my god.
Oh,
Jacob's a
that's-
very important question. Is she still your girlfriend? Or
Yeah.
is she your girlfriend?
Yep.
no,
came from him.
oh,
You're talking about Swags.
Yeah, I'm asking him
Oh, okay,
personally.
Sorry, the
No,
optics
Did it work
changed.
out?
What?
we definitely never met up. It was very much like, can I please interview you?
Professional to the end.
Dude.
You might have shot yourself in the foot on that one.
Imagine you just like, all right, this date's going really great. I'm going over to his home. Why is there a microphone
Yeah,
here?
he like sits you
They have a
down
whole
in front of a
60 minutes set
microphone.
up.
I send
Why
you
is
journalist
there-
requests. Please respond.
It's like, oh, okay, he's into some real kinky stuff. He wants to record it. Oh, he's got notes and
Yeah.
questions.
Wears his press pass.
Puts on a tie.
Yeah.
Viewers at home, this is what I fucking do for you.
He's sliding into all the Ukrainian woman DMs,
Yeah.
being like, "I sent you journalist requests. Please respond, please."
Pasta goes on for 10 minutes about how hot Ukrainians are, and Swag's like, nah.
Yeah, they're great references.
I skipped it for an interview.
He's on that grind set every
Yeah.
day.
Swag's on the
But is he on that grinder set looking for the
Miss.
For them to-
Oh, now
gotta
swag.
figure
That's
out-
enough.
Miss, I'm not looking for marriage. I'm already married to the grind.
That is a Sigma move, if there ever was one.
Exactly. I'm on Grinder not to get with guys, but to get exclusive news sources.
I swear I'm not gay. I'm just sucking dick so they'll talk more.
So Pasta. If anybody at home wanted to, join the Legion, and
Yeah.
how would they go about doing that? How would the
I have no
average
fucking
person?
clue.
Okay,
You did it!
you did it though.
The only reason that I even might know where to start is because I have contacts over there. That honestly, it's all about who you know. So my recommendation, and as shitty as it sounds, it's the best way to do it. Go to Kyiv, and then walk around, and anybody that speaks English, go talk to them. That is the best way to make contacts over there. Like if you hear two folks just jabbing away at a cafe, go up and ask them what they do. Because honestly, that's how we met our terp. That's how we met our medical guy. That's how we met a lot of folks. I think that's even how we met the guy that got us into the ZSU.
Was just chatting them up.
So
Yeah,
just
seriously, it's all word of mouth. It's
So-
crazy.
you just go to Ukraine and you're like, I want to help, and they'll be like, Hey.
Yeah,
All right.
You're in the military now.
So the way that most people start is going out and doing humanitarian aid, quote unquote. I use that very loosely because some of the supplies that you might be running may not necessarily be humanitarian in nature, but
Bullets.
like
Gun.
there's a NGO called 3XR that's pretty big. When I went out earlier, there was an organization called Frontline Relief Runners. I mean, you can go on the internet and find any number of organizations and just go out and volunteer, and you'll meet people that way too. But as far as like a go to this building and talk to this person, I can't give you a straight answer solely because if I knew that information, it would probably get hit with an Iskander or something.
Oh, sure.
So.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Would you consider yourself a thrill seeker? Because I'm looking at these videos you're sending and pictures, and you look awfully cheerful in a lot of them.
I'm having a good. I don't know that I'm necessarily a thrill seeker, but I do enjoy watching things blow up.
Yeah.
And there's
Even if they're, like, right
there's
by
one
your
place
head.
in the world that you can get that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the one thing I will say is that footage of the drone, don't share that around. Everything else, I don't really give a shit. Just make sure you blur faces.
Yeah, anything that, like I said, I'll send you a rough draft of everything before I even like send it to anyone else on the team, just so you can have final say. I guess my last question, and anyone else is free to ask afterwards, but my last question is just, how much longer do you see this going? And I know you're not necessarily qualified to answer that, but just from what you saw, like, is there any resolution to the conflict? Like, if military force is the only way that it's going to end, is it a permanent stalemate, or will one side eventually yield?
My guess is it's either going to be a permanent stalemate or I just don't see Russia losing, unfortunately. The best we can do is kind of hold them at bay, and that's not what people like to hear, unfortunately. But I was watching a video that I would tend to agree with. I'd have to pull it up. I'll put it in the chat so you can link it. But basically, the guy is saying the Ukrainians assaulting is not working. And we need to, kind of back off and regroup a little bit and kind of bait the Russians into attack so they waste more resources at the sacrifice of more ground. But it's what they're doing now isn't working. And all of the commanders, like there were a couple of commanders that have said, like for the spring counteroffensive that wasn't really a counteroffensive, they were like, yeah, we just don't have the manpower, the equipment or anything, and it's probably not going to go very well. And he was 100% right, and he got fired for it. A lot of the Ukrainian upper command is absolute dog water, and they kind of see I'm hesitant to say rose-colored lens because it's war, nothing is really rose-colored, but
they think they know what is best.
Well, they see things as though they can do no wrong, and as the past, 6 months have proven, that is absolutely not the case. So I would say either a stalemate, or Ukraine is going to have to give up Crimea and the Donbass, which absolutely sucks. Like, that's not what anybody likes to see, but I just don't see that they have a way out of it other than maybe wearing Russia down through economic sanctions and absolutely tanking their economy, like completely isolating them. And even then you can only do so much because China and India will still buy from them. So.
Yeah, it's a grim reality.
So you would
I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but
no,
it's interesting because you said you're still wanting to go back, even knowing that that like the people above you are the ones making the decisions, and you know that they are not going to make the best possible decision. You still want to go and help.
Yeah, well, so the new brigade that we're with is better than most. They certainly have their issues, but they're pretty good about letting us do what we need to do. Like I said, the Ukrainian commanders, our commander is a fairly young guy, our brigade commander. Actually, I guess he's battalion commander. Anyway, he's a fairly young guy, but he still kind of abides by that mindset of if we're not attacking, we're wasting time, and that's fine, except you have to make sure that everybody's ready. For example, we basically built all of the equipment that we have. We kind of cobbled it together from other shit. And it took a while to work out. Like I'll be perfectly honest, it takes about 5 months to stand up a drone team. Typically, we did ours in about 2. That is wicked fast, and it comes with a lot of teething problems. And when we got pushed out onto position, we were fairly rushed because the commander was like, "Yeah, we need results. We need to prove that this new drone team is no slouch." And so they kind of, like I said, they rushed us out on position, and we sent 2 guys out there, and they had so many issues. They were combat ineffective by the second day. So, like I said, there's something to be said for taking your time, and the Ukrainians don't understand that. Like I said, a moment not attacking is a moment wasted for them.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's much more desperate from their point of view at times. Or,
yeah,
I guess, bold.
Every inch that they take back is taking back their own ground. So I get it. They want to they want to fight on the Russians' ground, not theirs, which I totally understand. But you're doing that at the sacrifice of a shitload of Leopard A6s and massive casualties and stuff. At some point, it's just not worth it.
It's putting the cart before the horse, militarily.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, like what's the point of gaining 10 miles if you lose the troops needed to hold 15 miles?
Yeah, and that was a lot of the stuff that we dealt with the trench assaulting unit. Is we'd go and assault a trench, and the Ukrainians would abandon it the next day. They'd just get pushed back out of it.
Yeah. Grim shit.
That was the end of my questions. If anyone else has some.
For the slightly more grim shit, staying on that topic, what's, as someone who's worked with a lot of their military and stuff like that, what's your opinion on like Zelensky as far as like the very top end of things?
I don't generally have much against Zelensky. I mean, no world leader's perfect. Neither is he. But as far as what they've done with kind of the corruption crackdown, that's huge. The corruption in that country is so bad, and it's just kind of a universally accepted thing out there. Like in the United States, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, corruption is there, but we can't see it, and we're not sure if it really happens." Over there, it's blatantly obvious. They don't even try and hide it.
You watch the politician pay off the police, like in person.
Seriously, yeah. When we went to get our medical done, at the end of it, after all your checks, the hospital administrator has to like stamp your paperwork or whatever, and he was like, "Well, I can stamp it now, and we have to wait a week for everything to go through, or you can just pay me like 2,000 hryvnia a piece, and we'll take care of it right now."
Christ.
How much is that in?
It's not a lot.
$3.
Yeah. I mean, it ended up being like $50 for 4 guys. I don't remember exactly what the exchange was.
Man, it's sad when it's corruption, but it's also very cheap corruption.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my girlfriend about the driver's license process out there, and she goes, "Yeah, it's virtually impossible to like pass your driver's test normally." She tried. She took it like 2 or 3 times, and eventually I think her uncle, her birthday present for her 18th birthday was for her uncle to bribe the driving official.
Hell yeah!
Now that's a present. I did have another one that it's as you're American. I forgot for a half second. How do you feel about like all the tax money and stuff going to fund it. Like I think there was $100 billion relief package for Ukraine and Israel the other
Okay.
day.
So the thing to note about that is, yes, that's a fucking huge number, but that 100 billion or that 1 billion number is not necessarily going straight into Ukraine's pocket. A lot of it is going to our military, and then our military is then giving Ukraine all of our old stuff. So it's not necessarily, we're just airdropping pallets of money over Ukraine. It's like, we're upgrading our military, and then they're getting our hand-me-downs.
Yeah, I had heard a lot of that where it's like, okay, this tank is on paper worth X amount of money. We don't use it anymore, so we're quote unquote giving them X amount of money.
Is it?
So the good?
I was gonna say, is it making any difference?
Yeah. So the Humvees that we assaulted trenches in were up armored ex-Marine Corps Humvees, actually. And they were from like 2010. So I guarantee what happened is the U.S. military bought a bunch of JLTVs or whatever the new Humvee replacement is, and then just gave Ukraine their old stuff. And I don't necessarily know where those came from. I don't know if they were, in Europe already and then got brought in, or if they were from the States and they got brought over the Atlantic. I don't know exactly where they came from. I wish I did. That would be a cool history lesson. But a lot of it's old stuff.
So it's almost like how you do a tax write-off by donating to charity.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm not giving a charity $50,000. I'm giving them a painting that's worth $50,000.
Exactly. Yeah. And even then, it's like giving them a painting that was once worth $50,000, but now has a tomato stain on it.
Mm-hmm.
A tomato stain. That's a lovely image for a Humvee.
Those things are bad.
Yeah.
I went to close the door because they're the up armored ones, so the doors weigh like 800 pounds. I went to close the door and it broke the little shackle off. Like, on the way back, on the way back from getting concussed, I was in the back of that Humvee, a normal one this time, and that was when the door broke, and so I was like dying, puking out the side of the Humvee, and I couldn't close the door. I had to hold it shut the entire way, and it's like an 800-pound door, so when you go around a corner, it wants to open.
It wants to swing you out with it.
Yeah, it was a rough drive.
Jesus.
And then I only had one other question, and it was I had heard, especially early on with a lot of the like Foreign Legion and things like that there were lots of people from like alt-right American militias or people that are from countries that are currently going through like looks like a civil war is about to start, and people sending people over to Ukraine to get combat experience. Like how
Absolutely can confirm. A lot of them. So they weren't in our unit when we were there, but after we left the 59th, they got a bunch of Colombians, and they were like Caliente Cartel or something. Like they were sending cartel folks over there to get combat experience so that when they came back to Colombia, they, wouldn't know what to do. It was, it's crazy.
It's like turning it into a training ground of sorts.
That's insane.
Yeah. Like I said, this was after my time, but there have been multiple instances of that. The guy that had Hep C was Colombian, and a lot of, he brought these guys in just because, he's Colombian, he's got the contacts or whatever, but they were like face tatted. We ran into a couple of them at a bus station one time, and it was like, oh shit, that's probably not great.
Well, kind of on that topic then, were there ever any instances where like this group of guys that were from this place found out that another group of guys were from a place that they had beef with, and so you had people quote unquote on the same side beefing with each other?
I don't know about that. There were a couple of instances. So a lot of our combat footage, the reason I can share that with you is because it's already been leaked to Sky News. The guy that leaked it was just an Irish shitbag.
I remember you telling me about him.
Yeah, and that motherfucker, he would get high on something. I don't think it was gabapentin because his eyes would go like red, and I don't think that's a side effect of gabapentin. Anyway, he would get high on something and just go absolutely crazy on everyone. Like he threatened to frag us all, crazy. And then there was another story. I wasn't involved with it, but I heard about it. It was some dude that was had fought in the country at one point and then had become like an NGO, and there was a mix-up with money or whatever, and some of the guys from his NGO ended up like killing him and then dumping his body in the river.
What?
Yeah.
It is
NGO's
the Wild West.
non-government organization, or
Yeah. Yep.
is that, and not to sound rude, is that like the more modern way of saying like PMC?
No. Basically, if you want to fight in that country, you have to go through the military. There really isn't any PMC. NGOs can mean anything from they transport weapons or they're humanitarian aid. It means that they're an organization operating within the country. It's kind of a catch-all.
So non-combat people that are still doing like government contracts and stuff.
Okay.
It doesn't even necessarily have to be government contracts. I mean, shoot, we had a couple of NGOs come out, and one of our guys had just met him on Instagram or something, and they
met him on Ukrainian Tinder.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they just brought out like care packages and stuff. There was nothing official about it. They were just out there to help. And like I said, that can be anything from humanitarian aid like food, batteries, water, that sort of thing, to running guns across the country. It's kind of hard to run anything explosive or weapons across the country solely because the military handles most of that. And if you don't have written permission, so we have the ability to get guns out there. We have contacts with logistics organizations and stuff, but you have to have brigades sign off, and the issue with that is then whatever you brought across becomes the brigades. So you could bring, for example, if you wanted to bring a Glock over there, you could totally do that if you got a brigade signature, but then it's the brigade's Glock.
Yeah.
It's military property at that point.
Exactly. Yep.
Kind of something that I just thought of too is you were talking about like people not wanting to run, for example, explosives and stuff like that. How common do you think it is where there's people over there just like casually committing not heinous war crimes, like the stuff that you wouldn't immediately think of as, oh yeah, that's illegal?
It's common as hell. Even regular war crimes are common as hell, and it's not even necessarily malicious intent. It's just a logistical thing, right? So if you take prisoners, then suddenly you have to feed them, and you have to guard them, and you have to escort them all the way back to base, and then you have to surrender them to the SBU. And it's a whole process, and for a lot of units, it's just not worth it.
So there's actually a lot of like fighting to the last on both sides then?
Oh, 100%. Like there was a video that came out of Russians executing, they captured a couple of Ukrainians and just executed them. And as sad as that is, it's not at all surprising. It just doesn't make sense. There's legitimate reasons to do that. That's not just malicious intent.
That's not just being... It's really hard to have these conversations because, like, obviously someone's first thought is going to be, oh my God, they killed an unarmed combatant. Clearly, we can all agree that is a war crime and, like, horrible.
100%.
But in the moment, especially if you're, someone above you has been taken out in combat, you're basically making decisions on your own. And you know that if you bring a prisoner back to your camp, whichever side of the conflict you're on, like that prisoner's one, a liability, and two, an extra mouth to feed. Like it just doesn't.
And there's a decent chance they will get you killed too. If they're wounded, especially, even exfilling our own wounded is a risky fucking endeavor. That's one of the things that kills the most Ukrainians is, a group of 4 guys, they have to be bunched up because, you're around a cot. Each one of you has a hand on the cot. There's no way to do that you're not close as hell to each other. And then all the Russians have to do is drop 1 grenade in the center of you, and it gets 5 kills, including the guy on the cot. So it's risky as hell.
So do you think that that's kind of driven a bit more of a culture on both sides of like, hey man, you're probably going to get killed anyway. You may as well just fight till you're out of ammo.
Yeah, well, there was another video that came out recently. I think it was the Ukrainians. One guy just takes a bunch of shrapnel, gets his legs blown off or something. I don't know. It was blurred. And one of the Yukis just puts him out of his misery. It's like you're not only are we not sure you're going to live, but you're going to endanger the folks around you as well. So it's better. It's better for everyone involved, unfortunately, which is such a sad thing to say, but it's the reality of war.
It's like the most, because you hear this phrase a lot and it kind of becomes a joke, but that's the most real version of like, he knew the risks, like going into combat, taking fire, like either way, whichever side you're on, if you wind up being wounded, you are a liability to anyone around you.
Well, the really sad part is both sides don't really have a choice. That was part of my prerogative going over there. Was I know that I can kind of take that shit, but there are a lot of conscripts out there that have to, like they don't have a choice. And I've met Yukis out there that are not cut out for combat, but they might have to go fight anyway. So it's just one of those things it's added to the reasons of, why you go out there and do this shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that people have done on like, I think the number is like only 10% of rounds fired are ever shot directly at an enemy, and if you lose more than like, I think it's 10% or 20% of your unit, it's almost guaranteed to be a rout. With the lack of being able to take prisoners and things like that, and the supply issues on both sides, how do you think that's played into stuff like that?
Well, 100% of my rounds fired were at somebody, but I might be skewing that graph a little bit.
Well, yeah, because it's like across the army, because there's going to be people just shooting wildly because we're in combat. Just put rounds down there.
You'd be surprised how many both Ukrainians and Russians do the Haji thing, where they just like stick their rifle above their heads and start spraying over the berm. The amount of rounds on target is probably not super great, especially when you're taking into account the machine guns and stuff. Like the amount of tree lines that have been just mowed down from PKM fire and stuff is ridiculous.
Is there like a punishment for that of like, hey, you're wasting ammo, dude? Or is it more just like at least they're not running, at least they're staying where they are?
Not really. So the PKM, at least machine guns in general, are meant more to suppress than kill. That's not necessarily the case in this war, just because the Russians do that human wave thing. But like you were saying with ammo,
human wave?
Oh yeah. The Russians, that's like their main tactic. They will just rush a position with a wave of men.
All of them armed?
Sorry?
All of them armed? Or like just
like if it's a Ukrainian position that they're trying to assault, they'll just send like 50 dudes and say run in that direction until you see Ukrainians and then go kill them. And that generally doesn't work out very well.
Literal Zerg rush.
Oh,
yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, I wasn't there for it, but the unit that we're currently with told us stories of when they were fighting to take Izium. There was a Russian BMP. So they'd done the whole human wave thing, and a bunch of them got mowed down. A few of them were wounded. Most of them were dead. And instead of trying to go out there and collect their wounded, they just put a a Russian BMP with like the bulldozer attachment on them, and they went out and like scooped all these Russians up and dumped them into a mass grave and then buried them alive.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, that's
Hey.
something.
Yeah.
It's not a cheerful
Yeah.
It's like the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah.
Have you?
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, Merc, you said last question like 17 questions ago.
There's been a lot of questions.
That's fine. Everybody
been a
asks
lot
as
of
many
questions.
questions as you got.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot what the other ones were.
That's okay. You go ahead and ask. We're running very over the amount of time I had allotted.
Which is fine.
Just because editing it down, but I think this is all excellent, and I will definitely find ways to use all of these answers. Like, you might just wind up having, about 1,000 little short Q&A things that I send at you and say, hey, is this okay for me to put out?
Yeah. I think most of it is. The one fuck up that I had, I told you to bleep.
Right.
So at least that'll be in the video, and you can use that as a reference.
Right. But go ahead, Mert.
So I was just, and this actual last one is, so there's been kind of that idea for a long time of like Russia mostly just using, just overwhelming numbers and things like that. Have you seen them start to move away from that to being more tactical as things go on, or is it still pretty much just keep trying to grind it down?
No, that's the Russian strategy, and the Russians are even worse than the Ukrainians when it comes to strategy, thankfully. But it's mass quantities of everything. That's their plan. It has been since like World War II. They take the minefields, for instance. Their solution to advancing Ukrainian troops is to just mine everything, and it works. It's expensive and wasteful, and it means that you can never really build anything there again, at least not for dozens of years. But it 100% works. That's another thing that Russia always says is, oh yeah, we're going to rebuild this, and this. They're not rebuilding shit. It's going to take hundreds of years to clear out all the minefields from that area.
It's like modern scorched earth and salting the fields kind of tactics.
Yeah, and that's fine if that's what you want to do, but don't go around saying that you're going to rebuild shit when it's obviously not going to happen. Look at the Donetsk airport. They were like, oh yeah, we're going to rebuild this. And they literally tore more of it down since they took it over. So not that that's much of a loss. It was all fucked up anyway.
I have a little question just to tail end this.
Yeah.
Is most of your day-to-day like focused on this war stuff, or is it because it seems kind of like strangely mixed between this deeply kind of intense war focus and also kind of like the daily life of Ukrainian Tinder.
Yeah.
What's the ratio? It's like life goes on, but also there's this looming war hanging overhead.
Well, it's crazy. So when you're on the front, like, war is there and you have to participate in it, and that's pretty much all consuming. But you go back to the cities and it's like, wow, there's no war here. Like, walk around, especially in like downtown Podol and like Lviv and stuff like that. Like, people are walking around having ice creams and it looks totally normal. Yeah, it's crazy that like 6 hours in the other direction is like World War One.
Wow, what a comparison! World War One specifically.
Yeah.
People just throwing bodies at each other
and
digging trenches.
Yeah, that's the way it's described sounds a lot like World War One.
It really is, because air dominance isn't a thing. That was kind of the reason that stuff didn't really work much in wars since World War One. But since neither side can really, especially with man pads, even if one side had total air dominance, just some random dude with a Stinger can take down a helicopter or a plane or whatever. It's not that hard. Like, it's really easy to take down aircraft. Actually, one of the guys that I fought with took down a Mi-28 early war in Mykolaiv, and he's like the first American to get a kill or an air kill in Europe since like World War II. So, yeah,
Interesting.
Nice. Well,
So
I don't think I have any more questions, but yeah.
So, yeah. Does anyone else have questions for him?
So fucking many. I got so many, man.
shoot,
Yeah,
man.
Swag, you've been so quiet this whole time.
He's been writing
Yeah,
them
I've been
down.
banking up the
What's
questions,
fucking new?
man. I've been banking them up. All right. So I don't think you mentioned this in the chat, but like when you messaged me initially, you said you got a confirmed kill. Is this
Yeah.
correct? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so that was when I was in the back of the Humvee right before I got blown up. That was the drone crew. That was the support crew for the tank that was shooting at us. I was just facing in the right direction, and you see that shitty Russian camo, and you're like, oh well, obviously who those guys are. They were. I'm honestly surprised I hit them. It was about 200 or 300 meters away, and I was in the back of a moving Humvee, and I just like let off a burst, and I saw one of those dudes face plant, just like fold instantly, and then I think I got one more. I'm not 100% sure. I don't really know. The other guy just kind of slumped over. I don't know if he was like taking cover or if I actually got him. And then the third guy I know I didn't hit because he started sprinting.
Do you feel like that kind of changed things for you? Because like before it's like, oh, I'm being kind of shot at, maybe shooting at people, explosions around, but like, no, I have a confirmed kill now. Like, did that change a lot for you?
Not really. But what my team leader gave me some advice before we left. He goes, if you ever get scared, just start shooting your rifle. It makes you feel better. And it 100% does. I can confirm firsthand that makes a difference. Because it makes it feel like a fight. You're not just getting shot at.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in wielding a firearm. And I think, would you say that kind of like helps you feel like you have a little bit more control in the situation?
Yeah, partially. Like I said, it suddenly becomes a fight, not just, oh my god, I'm getting shot at. It's like, all right, we're gonna fucking settle this one way or another.
It's
And
less like control
peace
than
in
a
that.
more. It's more like it's like action. You're doing something and you have something to focus on rather than like.
Yep.
Yeah, I see. Well, it's not the best therapy, but I guess it helps in the moment.
Well, honestly, I didn't get up close and personal
Yeah,
with any
I
of
guess-
these guys. It was just silhouettes in the distance.
I
So
can
it
imagine that
didn't-
would be much more rough if that did.
Yeah, it's one thing if you're in hand-to-hand combat. I just saw some silhouettes go down. That was all it was to me.
Hmm.
So there's no like fucking like taking the life of a human being. That's pretty fucking nuts just to say that out loud. Like you haven't like dwelled on it at all.
Nah, like I said, it's just silhouettes. If you go shooting at a range, it wasn't any different, at least to me. It might have been one thing if I had like actually gotten up and seen them, but I just saw silhouettes. They were there. I shot at them. They were not there anymore.
I suppose the kind of therapeutic uncompartmentalization comes after the war is done.
Maybe, I don't know. It just
Something
never
about
seems
it.
that complicated.
Yeah, but-
It's not as earth-shattering as you'd be led to believe.
Oh, that's sad.
No, I've definitely heard that before. My dad actually was a senior chief in the Navy, and he was a senior chief
nice.
journalist in the Navy, and he literally sat me down because he had to go through therapy for it, and he was like, the best way that you can get through situations like that is you have to like otherize it. You have to say that's not a person over there. That's a dangerous object that needs to be removed.
Yep, that's exactly how that works. 100%. Honestly, it's 100% on point with that. It's a black object in the distance moving. It's not not a person. You don't know them. They just need to be eliminated.
Mm.
And I don't think when... Oh yeah, you go on, Skip, and then I'll say my...
I was going to say, it's crazy to hear you say that considering you didn't have military experience before this.
I mean, there's nothing that can... There's no training that you can do that can teach you to do that. It's just kind of... You have to naturally think of it that way. Even if you spend a decade in the military, there's nothing that can tell you how you're going to react to combat other than going and doing it. Even if you watch like Jarhead, where they're like, crawling through the mud and like the machine guns are shooting over you, it's one thing being shot at, it's another to be shot at by an enemy.
Being around gunfire versus someone trying to kill you, kind of thing.
Yeah, think of it as the same difference as being behind a gun versus in front of it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to comment as well and say that like I totally get like your mindset and mental for that, because it's completely understandable when you consider that the average soldier on either side, right, especially in this conflict, shouldn't have the burden of, considering the nature of why they're there in the first place, right? Nobody should be there. Nobody should be fighting at all, right? But that's not up to the individuals in the trenches and on the front lines to decide, right? So having that approach and compartmentalizing it and kind of, coming at it with this perspective that you're showing to us here, I think is, I don't know the right word to describe it, so I don't really want to like pin an adjective there, but or a descriptor, but I don't know. It's just interesting, right? I'll say that at least. Like I think it's noble for you, especially, that you're able to kind of sit in the call with us, given your experience and then future experience to come, and still be very level-headed, adjusted, whatever else you want to kind of self-attribute.
Well, level-headed is one of those things that you just don't know if you're going to be able to keep. Like, for example, one of the volunteers that my friend was out here with early war, they were just in a hotel in Kyiv, and there was, Shaheeds coming in and stuff like that, and they were getting taken out by the air defense, but he just, like, curled up on the floor and shut down. There's no way to know how you're going to react. There are indicators. For example, our translator, when we this might not make it in, but when we were on our way to finish our contracts for the new unit, and the engine blew up in our truck. And it was his truck, like he paid for it with his own money. And he had been drinking a little bit, so I think that contributed to it too. But he just shut the fuck down. Like there were 4 of us in the truck, and the guy that got the Mi-28 kill, and I kind of went off to go, like, I'm like, let me be mad for about 5 minutes, and then we'll go away and work on a solution. Our translator sat in the driver's seat, shut the fuck down. My friend, he went off, got on the phone with some girl, because he's got a girl in every city. I think just to not think about it. So, it's one of those things that you can kind of tell how you're going to react when things go wrong, but it can't fully prepare you for, actually taking fire.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Was there a lot of understanding, or was there a lot of shame, or like versus the people that realized that they couldn't exist there versus like your buddy realized he couldn't exist there?
Well, none of my guys were that bad. Like all of them are still there. All of them are still fighting. So none of them were that bad. But if I was in the position where I just got freaked out so badly that I couldn't function, I would definitely be ashamed about it. I can't speak for anybody else, but that's just me. That might be why I stay so level-headed, is because I know that I could not live with myself if I did. I flipped the fuck out.
Yeah.
Well, you
So
also
heavy
have.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Go on.
I was just going to say, you also have Ukrainian Tinder to kind of keep you balanced, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
girl in every city.
Yeah.
That and the crepe shops.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
the
the crepe
crepes are
shops.
good.
Yeah.
Lviv croissant, Fox.
I'm gonna say you might not know it because you're not like in these VC calls whenever we're all trying to like gather together and speak, but you have this uncanny talent to get everybody in this call to shut the fuck up because usually it's like
Yeah,
way
no,
louder than this.
Don't worry, I was gonna ask like, you busy?
What's your secret?
we could fucking use that every once in a while. Jesus Christ.
Because like you've got everybody listening like all years.
I don't
that's
know
how-
that's normal. Generally speaking, that is not a talent that I possess. I think it's just I have stories that you guys haven't heard before.
Yeah,
I think that's all it is.
And it's been like genuinely really eye-opening to get this perspective on things because in real life I work for a news company, and we get reports we get packages from reporters in New York, or occasionally we'll get something from overseas, but it's always on the outside looking in, it's just seeing the numbers and this city's been taken, this city has been seized back, this area is under fire. But hearing like stories about the individual people responsible for, like, you never think about a war as a series of individual people making like specific moves, a conflict can be won or lost by a truck being blown up, but people were in that truck. There was a reason they were driving it. There's a reason that it was targeted.
Well, I think you and I are coming from totally opposite perspectives, because I have the on-the-ground perspective, but I don't have the overall. Like, I get my information from the news like everybody else. But,
And then
yeah, it's totally opposite.
And then, like, for me, like, I grew up in a military family, so like 4 generations back. I'm the first person to not join the military in a line like 5 generations back, and my dad never went to a combat, like to a hot zone anywhere, like during the Iraq War or anything like that. But he was still going around to lots of places because he was a sergeant in a training unit, and so I saw a lot of the. Oh yeah, he talked to this guy that half his platoon got wiped out, and he talked to this guy who was there for 6 months and never fired a round. And it's like, it's really cool talking to somebody that has been in a combat zone directly. And what's really interesting is not from a military perspective, like not from the U.S. military.
Yeah. Well, the reason I didn't go into the U.S. military is, like you just mentioned, you have no idea if you're going to go there and see combat, or if half your time is going to be spent sitting at the base and you're not going to fire around in 6 months. That was my biggest gripe with the US military.
You had more freedom of choice going there independently than if you had joined the official military and gone as part of like a U.S. platoon?
Yeah, 100%. Basically, as a foreigner over there, if you don't want to go on a mission, you don't have to. If you want to go on a mission, you will go on a mission. It's entirely up to you. And because the Ukrainian government can't force foreigners to fight, but they have so much going on right now, it's entirely up to you. Like, they can't force you to go if you don't want to go. But if you do want to go, there's more than enough lines on the front to go fight over. So,
which is wild, because it was literally the exact opposite for my dad. He tried for like 3 years to go on a unit, to like get into a unit actually going into a combat zone, and this thing came up, that thing came up, this thing came up. Everyone in his brigade, I think, except for like his platoon, was the only one that didn't go over at one point. He's like, I'm trying to fight, and he just never could get over there.
Well, and that's the mentality a lot of U.S. soldiers have, but it's, like you said, it's just kind of not up to them. So, I initially, when I was in like high school, I wanted to be an EOD, but the more I read up on it and the more bullshit that I heard that was exactly like that, like you never know if you're actually going to be able to get deployed, and I wanted to do my job,
What's that, EOD?
Yeah.
I don't know, like,
Yeah.
what is that?
Explosive ordnance disposal.
Gotcha.
Hurt locker.
Yeah, apparently that one's not super accurate.
Closest frame of reference. I understand.
Yeah.
You mean that Top Gun isn't an accurate representation of an Air Force?
You mean military movies that glorify what happens in the military and drop zones? You
Whoa.
serious? What?
Well, it's really funny you're talking about Top Gun because they boosted the U.S. Navy and Ray-Ban, U.S. Navy recruitment numbers and Ray-Ban sales significantly.
Yeah, for both for Top Gun 1 and Top Gun 2.
Yep.
Ray-Bans are good though.
Sorry, I don't mean to interject the Q&A, but if y'all are curious, this was Pokrovsk right here, and this is an apartment that we stayed at. We stayed in the top floor in this building right here, and right here there is or was a Italian place called Corleone's, and it was like a big meeting spot. Like you go in there and you'd see at least 10 uniforms at least. And about a month after we left, they decided that place needed to catch an Iskander, so they put one like right there and one right there and blew this entire block out.
Jesus.
Oh,
Well, that checks out, I guess.
I was literally just about to ask if that felt like it was a target, that if there were a lot of military people there, and it's like, yep, nope, it got blown up.
Yeah, so we had a friend who fought in the Legion with the guy that got the Stinger kill. I say friend. I didn't really know him that well, but I don't know if you guys heard about the bombing in Kramatorsk of the pizza place.
I think so.
Yeah, that was
a
while ago. It was, I don't know.
I probably wrote about it if it was a while ago. Wasn't it like there was a guy, if I could be completely wrong, like talking at my ass about a different event, but it was like a guy doing like a speech or stand up, and a like guest in the audience walked up to him, jokingly said like, "Oh yeah, it's a bomb in here. Here's your gift." And it was a
the
bomb.
statue
Yeah,
gift
the
one.
bust.
Yeah,
Somebody
so this
gave
was a
a guy
different
Okay, different
one.
event. Okay,
Different
never
guy
mind.
blown up in a different pizza
event.
place.
That was in Russia, I think.
Okay, yeah.
That checks out. Anyway, so very similar situation. There was a pizza place that was frequented by a bunch of the Legion guys in Kramatorsk, and it caught a IS-300 or a Iskander or something, and just wiped out a bunch of folks, including one of the guys that we knew from the Legion. You just gotta stay away from that kind of shit out there.
So do a lot of like shop owners and stuff like that actually not like whenever a bunch of people tend to become regulars there because it can make them a target?
Well, so the issue in the East is everybody's a regular. It's just knowing who's a Russian sympathizer or not is an incredibly difficult task because everybody's so integrated over there. It's very similar to I guess to a lesser extent than like the Afghan war, where you just have no idea who's the enemy.
Silence befalls the crowd.
Yeah, well,
This is the quietest I've ever fucking heard anyone.
I think we're all internalizing what you're sharing with us, honestly.
I wanna be able to like absorb all of this because like I understand from like objectively this is not a once in a lifetime opportunity, but I feel like it was really I don't know what the word is. The only word that's coming to mind is brave, but like it was very forward thinking of you to want to share this story, like because you got to have this firsthand experience and because you like were part of things that maybe can't be publicly talked about, but that resulted in you getting a lot of experience very quickly with all of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how war goes. You can go in as a conscript, have 2 weeks of training, and then when you get out, you've got 2 weeks of training, but a year of active combat experience, and suddenly that's super valuable.
Yeah,
and,
suddenly you're a veteran.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Weird question that popped into my mind because of the way you worded that. But like, do you see yourself using this experience, assuming, however long in the future, 5, 10 years, etc. I'm doing the business like resume question where it's like, where
Yeah.
do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years with this military experience you now have?
Um, so it's funny you ask that because that was part of my motivation to go in the first place. It didn't end up being my motivation for staying, but when I had talked to my guy that had fought in Bucha and Irpin and Severo, he actually ended up getting shot in the pelvis in Severo, but that's a separate story. He had previously worked for G4S, which is like the biggest military contractor in the world. And I mean, I was talking with another friend. We're all friends. I was talking with another friend, and I was like, man, his job sounds exactly like what I wanted to do. And he was basically an IT professional that would just go to war zones and do IT stuff there. I'm like, that sounds absolutely metal. I want to do that.
So you are kind of a thrill seeker then.
So you are kind of insane, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's
There's
just
nothing wrong with that, yeah.
yeah.
You want to do a good thing, but you're also like, I want to be on the front line and be doing IT. It's kind of like such a cool dissonance to me for a person to be like, I want to be there, but I want to be using a computer while bullets are going over my head.
I want to tell someone to turn it off and turn it back on again while being shot at, please.
It's not necessarily that I'm, like looking for that. It's that I'm just kind of not scared of it, and it pays really, really well.
I was gonna say you recognize
well, no
that
shit, you're getting shot at.
You recognize that by not being scared of it, you are like more fit to do the job than someone who might be terrified in that moment.
Exactly. Yep,
Yeah.
That's spot on.
That's a very rational way to think of that.
One thing that I don't think anyone else has asked that I thought of is, how do you feel that we've kind of covered this conflict? Because I mean, it's been going on. I think even that January there was a story that we did on like, hey, there's kind of rumors of something going on, and then it just happening in the middle of the month. Like, how do you feel like the Swag News teams handled that?
So the news without the bullshit has always been spot on. While I was over there, I didn't get a whole lot of it. I haven't watched a lot of the Ukraine coverage because I was actively participating in it.
You were the coverage.
Yeah, you were in the coverage. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. But generally speaking, you guys have been pretty spot on, and it's not hard to stay up to date on this particular conflict because everybody's a clout chaser, especially. That's kind of why I want to stay anonymous with this whole thing.
Yeah.
Is there are so many guys out there that just want the fame, and I fucking hate that shit. Like the guy that leaked our shit to Sky News, that drives me up the wall.
I remember back, like this must have been probably 2022, like when this was still fresh. There was that, like TikTok star or YouTuber or something that got stuck in Ukraine.
Yeah. I remember
that
that.
until just now, and he like documented him trying to leave.
It's just dumb, and people put themselves in these situations for the wrong reasons. Like I said, there are so many clout chasers, especially when we were in the 59th. Like we would run into them all the time. There was a lady from New Zealand that showed up, and she was like gonna be our medic or whatever. I don't think the NCOs had really thought it through much, but she had a broken leg, and she just like showed up and was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be your medic." It's like we have more medically trained guys in the next room. Like we don't. The only reason you would need to be here is so you can say that you're with a unit and get clout. Like there's no reason for you to be anywhere near the front. That it's not that I have an issue with it. It's that it jeopardizes the mission.
It's like effectiveness, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You're wasting resources and you're heavily damaging OPSEC when you do that. it's bad. Like, when I mentioned that they had filled the trench with 40 recon guys, I'm not at all surprised that they knew we were coming, because the OPSEC, even if it wasn't that, the OPSEC in that unit was atrocious. They would just post shit all day long. So yeah, it was pretty brutal.
To be fair, I imagine someone with a broken leg might slow down operations on the front line.
Yeah.
Just a tiny bit.
Well, if you want accurate coverage of if you want unbiased coverage, there's a channel called History Legends.
That's not Sir Swag. I don't know who the fuck those people are.
How dare?
Well, that's like all he does is cover the Ukraine war, and he is not flattering for the Ukrainians. There have been times where I've looked at it and I'm like, is he a Russian sympathizer? And then I read into like what exactly he's talking about, and I'm like, oh shit, he's 100% spot on. He's not a sympathizer. He's just accurate.
That's important, right? I think accuracy above bias is very, very vital when it comes to any sort of reporting, especially this. I mean,
it's not flattering for the Ukrainians, and that's one thing that the Russian coverage is super flattering for the Russians, and the Ukrainian coverage is super flattering for the Ukrainians, and it's so hard to kind of parse out what's the bullshit.
Yeah, it's like, I think 3 months ago I was editing the story for Ukraine, and it was an order of magnitude difference in casualty reports of like Ukraine said they had killed like 50,000 in this conflict, in this battle, and Russia said they only lost 5,000, and then the UN report was like, it's probably about 40,000.
Yeah,
getting casualty reports just sucks in general, though.
Yeah, it's impossible to get them accurate, but the UN has fucked up a lot of things with this conflict, but the fact that they are actually able to... I actually met a couple of guys from the UN, and they're like, yeah, we know this organization is fucked up, but they were actually... They do some things all right.
Like their numbers reporting, you think is pretty trustworthy?
Yeah, well, it usually splits the difference, which I kind of take as a sign that it's probably accurate, because obviously Russia's going to over-report it and Ukraine's going to under-report it, so... Add them together, divide by 2.
It's like I guess the more things you look at, the closer you are to being correct when you haven't seen it yourself.
Yep. Kind of try and take the average.
Kind of on a subject of a different creator that does a lot of coverage. Have you seen much of Ryan Macbeth?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Think he's pretty solid on his coverage, or?
Yeah, 100%. He's one of the few kind of shorts YouTubers that I actually pay attention to.
Same. I think he's the only person that primarily does shorts that I'm subscribed to.
Yeah. Yep. I hate shorts because they suck me in, then I end up scrolling for hours, so I try and steer clear of them. But...
That's the goal. That's how they were designed.
Oh, yeah. I said in my initial interviews with Swag, I was like, yeah, I was the first person on YouTube making Team Fortress 2 shorts, and I went from 300 views a video to 2,000, 3,000 views because so many people just watch them.
Yeah, it's insane what you can do with YouTube shorts. I actively try to tell myself to stay off of them, because it's like I'll see one, I'm like, all right, maybe I'll just click that one, and the next thing I know, I'm
100% the same. It's like it's just visual crack.
I literally looked up from my phone and realized it's been 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's
Street junk food.
Speaking of which, we are now double the time that I had.
Who cares?
What about one more question? What about one more question
per person?
I only got to fucking ask one goddamn question.
You got 2.
I've asked my final question 3 times now.
Well, so here's the thing. I have everything that I need apart from a closing statement, but I don't see why we wouldn't also, Pasta, before you wind up going back overseas, I don't see why we wouldn't continue to ask you questions after this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't care. I'll tell you anything you want to know as long as it's not OPSEC.
But Swag or Cullen, are there anything that you feel has gone unsaid that definitely 100% has to make it in?
I guess you kind of covered on it, but like there's been talk among uh, pe people in the United States or U.S. representatives that the U.S. might not be supporting Ukraine for let's say in like 12, 18 months that funding might be completely cut off. What do you think the implications of that could be, like on the front lines? Where do you see that going if that were to happen?
I mean, you'd be cutting Ukraine off at the knees. That's we Russia is a huge superpower. They can kind of support themselves. Ukraine, by comparison, is tiny, and without the support of the United States and the EU, they're just not going to be able to hold their own. They need everything. Even like they're struggling even with the lack of manpower, just because the country's so small they can't support it. Like lots of weapons aren't necessarily the limiting factor here. It's a lot of it's manpower. But if you cut off what weapons they do have, and they start running low on those too, it's gonna be rough, especially artillery shells.
Okay, thank you.
And I had this thought too, Swag. If you want to continue the recording, you can start it on your end. I just have to dip out.
Okay.
Swag is like, fuck that.
Recording over.
If you had questions that you like specifically wanted to make sure were answered, the thing is, we've got everything that we need for the Swag Academy recording, and I have a thing that I need to get doing.
You've got to go.
Do I need to make a character? Do I need to make a graphic for
For
pasta?
I actually thought that through.
Okay, cool.
However, Cody and Merc are in this call. But
yes, yes, sons of bitches sing.
Everybody's getting characters.
Oh, and Swag say you
and
piece
Swag
of shit.
So Pasta, do you have what would be your final thoughts? And I guess they're not really final because you're going back. But like overall, how do you feel about your time?
It's always going to be a bit of a roller coaster. As cheesy as it sounds, the whole good times, bad times thing, it's 100%. Like, it's if bipolar was a country, that's Ukraine.
All right.
No, seriously, because they've got fantastic coffee, bomb on the street, excellent, just hot women everywhere you look. Literally watched a friend die. Like
lots of great crepes, also war crimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. For real. It's it's well, my girlfriend lives in Bucha, and she'll tell me stories because she stayed until the Russians were basically right at her front door, and she didn't want to leave because they had a dog and she loves the dog more than life itself. So. Yeah, they only took off when it was absolutely necessary. And I'll hear those stories and I'm like, you are so cute, but you have seen so much. I don't know how those two can go together.
After it is all said and done, would you want to stay in Ukraine or would you want to go back to the United States?
I don't know.
That's fair.
I really like the area that I'm in the United States, but I'm so fucking tired of the politics here. It's getting ridiculous.
You would rather live in a
fair
country
enough,
where you could actually bribe your doctors than
Yeah.
continue to live here.
That's how bad
brutal,
American healthcare is.
I mean, it's not even the healthcare. It's just everybody is so divided all of the time. It's exhausting to keep up with, and it's impossible to stay away from. So
This
You're
is
not
true.
excited
Yeah.
for the 2024 elections? Like,
Oh,
Ugh.
this year's
God.
cursed.
I-
This year's so
God.
fucking cursed.
Like
Whatever
the-
it's gonna be a shit show.
no,
like
absolutely.
I'm mad about it because I don't even live in the fucking country, and I'm gonna hear about it all the
Oh, yeah.
fucking
Yep.
time.
I'm gonna update
Yep.
you every 5 seconds. Max, this dumb thing happened.
I don't even need you to do that. It's just gonna the internet's just gonna be like, hey, look at all this shit, and I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
God,
Good times.
good
Yeah.
times.
Like I said, I gotta get going. By no means. If anyone else has questions, please continue. But I just want to, before I leave, I just want to say thank you so much, Pasta, for coming on and wanting to be like part of this.
Yeah.
It's
Anytime.
I genuinely think this is incredibly informative, and I'm excited for our audience to be able to see it.
Yeah, thanks for shutting everybody the hell up.